Have you ever wondered why some people seem to repeatedly make the same mistakes, while others learn and grow from their experiences? Today, we're going to explore something that the ancient Stoic philosophers understood deeply: the nature of foolishness. But before you think this is just another video about wisdom and intelligence, let me tell you why the next few minutes will be absolutely crucial for your personal growth. You see, in a world where we're bombarded with information about success, productivity, and self-improvement, we often overlook the fundamental traits that hold us back. The ancient Stoics, those practical philosophers who influenced emperors and common people alike, identified certain patterns of behavior that marked someone as a fool. And here's the surprising part: these patterns are more relevant today than ever before. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, once wrote in his Meditations, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." This profound observation leads us to our first identifier of a fool: the inability to control emotional reactions. A fool, my friends, is someone who lets their emotions drive every decision, every response, and every interaction. Think about the last time you saw someone explode in anger over a minor inconvenience, or make an impulsive purchase that they clearly couldn't afford. Seneca, another great Stoic philosopher, explained this beautifully when he said, "Anger is a temporary madness." The fool lives in this temporary madness, constantly allowing their emotional state to override their rational mind. But here's what makes this particularly dangerous in our modern world. Social media and instant communication have made it easier than ever to act on our emotional impulses. A fool doesn't take that crucial pause between feeling and acting. They don't practice what Epictetus taught us. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. Now, you might be thinking, well, everyone gets emotional sometimes. And you're absolutely right. But there's a crucial difference between experiencing emotions and being controlled by them. The wise person acknowledges their feelings but doesn't let them take the wheel. They understand what Seneca meant when he said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Let me tell you a story that perfectly illustrates this first sign. I recently witnessed a situation at a coffee shop where a customer became absolutely furious because his drink wasn't made exactly to his specifications. Instead of calmly requesting a correction, he created a scene, embarrassed himself, and ruined not just his own morning but the mood of everyone around him. The irony: the barista would have gladly remade his drink if he had just asked politely. This brings us to our second identifier of a fool: the inability to learn from experience. But before I reveal why this trait is particularly devastating in today's world and how it connects to the other three identifiers, I want you to really absorb what we've discussed so far, because understanding these first 2 points is crucial for recognizing the patterns in your own life and in the lives of those around you. The ancient Stoics had a practice called evening review, where they would reflect on their day's actions and learn from them. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Every evening, turn your attention to what you have done. If you find something wrong, reprimand yourself. If you have done good, rejoice." A fool, however, repeats the same mistakes, falling into the same traps, dating the same toxic people, making the same financial blunders, and never stopping to reflect on why. This inability to learn from experience manifests in various ways. You might know someone who constantly complains about their problems, but never takes any steps to address them. They might say things like, "That's just how I am," or "Life is unfair," without ever considering that their own actions might be contributing to their situations. Epictetus addressed this directly when he said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." Consider this: in our age of information abundance, where knowledge is literally at our fingertips, the fool remains stagnant. They might scroll through hundreds of self-improvement posts, watch countless motivational videos, but never implement any of the wisdom they encounter. They're like someone standing in the rain with an umbrella, complaining about getting wet while never opening the umbrella. This brings us to our third identifier of a fool: the refusal to accept responsibility for their own life. And this, my friends, is where things get really interesting. The Stoics were particularly adamant about this point. Epictetus, who began his life as a slave and ended it as one of history's greatest philosophers, said something profound. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. A fool consistently blames external circumstances for their internal state. They blame their boss for their career stagnation, their partner for their relationship problems, the economy for their financial struggles, and bad luck for pretty much everything else. But here's what makes this especially relevant today. We're living in an age where it's easier than ever to find someone or something to blame. Social media is full of people reinforcing each other's victim mentalities, creating echo chambers where personal responsibility becomes an alien concept. Marcus Aurelius, who faced countless challenges as the emperor of Rome, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The fool rejects this wisdom, preferring instead to surrender their power to circumstances beyond their control. They fail to understand that while we can't always control what happens to us, we always have control over our response to events. Let me share another story that illustrates this point perfectly. I know someone who spent years complaining about being stuck in a dead-end job. Every day they would come home and rant about their terrible boss, their annoying coworkers, and how unfair the system was. But when asked what steps they were taking to improve their situation, whether it was updating their skills, networking, or looking for other opportunities, they always had an excuse. "I don't have time. I'm too tired. The job market is terrible." Meanwhile, their colleagues, facing the same circumstances, were steadily advancing their careers through continuous learning and proactive networking. The fourth identifier of a fool is particularly subtle but equally devastating: the inability to delay gratification. Seneca touched on this when he said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." In our modern world of one-click purchases, instant streaming, and fast food, this weakness has become more crippling than ever. A fool lives entirely in the present moment, and not in the mindful, enlightened way that philosophy teaches, but in a hedonistic, short-sighted way. They sacrifice their long-term well-being for short-term pleasures. They choose the immediate dopamine hit over the delayed reward of meaningful achievement. This is the person who can't save money because they must have the latest smartphone, who can't get in shape because they can't resist immediate pleasures, who can't build meaningful relationships because they're always chasing the next quick fix of validation. Musonius Rufus, another great Stoic teacher, said, "We should discipline ourselves in small things, and from there progress to things of greater value." But the fool dismisses such wisdom, preferring instead the easy path of instant gratification. They fail to understand that everything worthwhile in life, physical fitness, financial security, meaningful relationships, professional success, requires the ability to delay gratification and endure short-term discomfort for long-term gain. And finally, we come to the fifth and perhaps most crucial identifier of a fool: the fear of standing alone. This might seem counterintuitive at first. After all, isn't it natural to want to belong? Yes, but there's a crucial difference between healthy social connection and the kind of desperate conformity that characterizes a fool. Epictetus addressed this when he said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid by the crowd." The fool, however, is paralyzed by the fear of others' opinions. They shape their entire lives around what they think others expect of them. They adopt opinions without examining them, follow trends without questioning them, and make life decisions based on social pressure rather than personal conviction. In our social media age, this weakness has reached epidemic proportions. People are literally living their lives for the approval of strangers on the internet, measuring their worth in likes and followers, and making decisions based on what will photograph well, rather than what will bring genuine fulfillment. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject." Yet the fool places more value on the opinions of uninformed masses than on their own carefully considered judgment. They would rather be wrong with the crowd than right by themselves. But here's the thing, and this is crucial to understand. None of these 5 identifiers is a permanent condition. The Stoics believed firmly in the capacity for human growth and change. Every fool has the potential to become wise, but only if they're willing to acknowledge these patterns in themselves and do the hard work of changing them. So, what's the practical takeaway from all of this? How can we use these 5 identifiers not just to recognize foolishness in others, but more importantly, to guard against it in ourselves? The answer lies in another profound observation from Epictetus. Progress is not achieved by luck or accident, but by working on yourself daily. Let's break down the antidote to each of these foolish traits, because understanding the problem is only half the battle. The other half is taking action to change it. For emotional reactivity, the solution begins with the practice of the pause. The next time you feel a strong emotion rising, especially anger or fear, take a deliberate breath. Remember Seneca's words, "The greatest power we have is the power of choice." In that pause, you reclaim your power to choose your response rather than being enslaved by your reaction. To overcome the inability to learn from experience, adopt the Stoic practice of daily reflection. Spend just 5 minutes each evening asking yourself 3 simple questions. What did I do well today? What could I have done better? What will I do differently tomorrow? As Marcus Aurelius reminds us, life is not just flowing by, but teaching us in its flow. For those struggling with taking responsibility, start small. Choose one area of your life where you've been blaming external circumstances and ask yourself, what's one thing I can do today to improve this situation? It doesn't matter how small the action is. What matters is taking ownership. As Epictetus said, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. To build the muscle of delayed gratification, begin with tiny victories. When you feel the urge for immediate pleasure, practice waiting just 5 minutes. Then 10. Then an hour. Musonius Rufus taught that habits are strengthened by repeated acts. Each small victory over immediate gratification builds the strength for larger ones. And for those who fear standing alone, remember that true strength often requires solitude. Start by forming one opinion based solely on your own careful thought and research, regardless of what others think. As Seneca advised, withdraw into yourself as far as you can. Associate with those who will make a better person of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve. But here's what makes all of this truly powerful. These changes compound over time. Just as a fool spirals deeper into foolishness through repeated unwise choices, a person committed to wisdom creates an upward spiral through consistent wise choices. Each small victory makes the next one easier. Each moment of thoughtful pause makes the next pause more natural. Each instance of taking responsibility builds the muscle for greater responsibility. Remember, the goal isn't perfection. Even Marcus Aurelius, one of history's wisest rulers, wrote daily reminders to himself about staying on the path of wisdom. The goal is progress, consistent, deliberate progress toward becoming a better version of yourself. And here's something the ancient Stoics understood that we often forget. Wisdom isn't just about accumulating knowledge. It's about transforming your character. It's about becoming the kind of person who naturally makes wise choices, not because they've memorized a list of rules, but because they've developed the inner strength and clarity to see the right path and follow it. As we wrap up this exploration of foolishness and wisdom, I want to leave you with one final thought from Marcus Aurelius. Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. The choice between foolishness and wisdom is available to us in every moment. It's not about being perfect. It's about being aware and making conscious choices. If you've recognized some of these foolish traits in yourself, don't be discouraged. That recognition is actually the first step toward wisdom. The fool remains foolish precisely because they can't or won't see these patterns in themselves. By being aware of them, you're already on the path to overcoming them. Remember, every wise person you admire once started exactly where you are now. The only difference is they made a conscious decision to change, and then backed that decision with consistent action. As Seneca said, it's not because things are difficult that we dare not venture. It's because we dare not venture that things are difficult. So, what will you choose? Will you continue in old patterns, or will you take the first step toward greater wisdom today? The choice, as always, is yours. Thank you for staying with me through this exploration. If you found value in these insights, Make sure to like and subscribe for more content that bridges ancient wisdom with modern living. Share this video with someone who might benefit from it, and let me know in the comments which of these 5 identifiers resonated most with you. Until next time, remember, wisdom isn't a destination, it's a journey. And it begins with a single choice to be better today than you were yesterday.